May the blessings of the new moon be upon you as we celebrate this time. And with everything going on, we thought it would be fun to talk about holding space together and what it means to actually hold space for ourselves and for others. Join us as we walk down creation's paths. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie. I'm a non binary Christo-pagan druid who practices creation spirituality. I am joined today by my wonderful husband, Brian,
Hello.
who is most of those things, just not non binary. Today, as we celebrate the new moon, which we associate with the Via Negativa, or the second path of creation spirituality, we thought we would focus on a couple things, actually. One, what I feel is the most underrated or under discussed element of the Via Negativa, which is spaciousness. We talk about emptying, but we don't talk about what we're actually making when we're emptying. We're not just trying to be empty, we're trying to make space.
I'm often told to practice silence. Yeah.
To be more accurate, you're told to meditate.
Oh, that's what that is. Oh.
Yes, yes. So if we have a bit of levity to us today, it's because over the weekend we launched our two new podcasts that we've been talking about for a little while on here. So both the Church of the Oak and the Hollowstead are now available wherever fine podcasts are served. So if you haven't checked them out, the Church of the Oak is a weekly sermon series from me that will come out every Sunday. They're a little bit fierier than what we have here, dedicated to one topic. They're there for edification, for building people up, for devotion, and things like that. And the Hollowstead will be a weekly meditation, prayer, and ritual podcast where every week we're going to give you a different guided meditation, prayer, ritual, offering something of that sort to help you connect more deeply to your spirituality and to the world around you. We are amazed at how our plans are coinciding so that they're all kind of themed together, which was not top of our mind when we were doing this, but is a wonderful byproduct. And all hail the spirit and the Elwyn that is keeping us together and all that. So if you haven't checked those other podcasts out, definitely check them out. If you're listening to us on YouTube and you have subscribed to our YouTube channel, you saw them actually come out over the weekend there, because all you have to do is subscribe to the channel and you get everything that we make. All right. So holding space. What does it mean to hold space? This is something near and dear to my heart because when I was going for my ordination, I did it through an offering of the Charter for Compassion. I received my certification as a vision keeper. The purpose of a vision keeper is to hold space. What does that mean? It means that you are developing within yourself through path one, through the Via Positiva, this wonderful openness, this hospitality, this welcoming, this ability for awe and wonder so that you can bring that as an offering for others. And you are opening up space and welcoming everyone in so that they can have an experience there. They can feel free to speak, free to visit, and really free to participate in everything that you're doing. Without somebody who is going to cleanse the space and open it up, it's very hard to have a good conversation, ritual work, prayer work, any of the various crafts and operations that we generally do. This really is a work of the Via Negativa, because while we learned in the Via Positiva, the first path, how to engender that awe and welcome, that hospitality, that cosmic hospitality, and from path three, the Via Creativa, how to give rise and give form, and through the Via Transformativa, or the fourth path, we learned how to celebrate and how to work for justice. All of that comes in here to the most vital role of someone who is there to hold space, whatever you call them. I really like the title of Vision Keeper. It is something that is near and dear to my heart, one that I will probably maintain for the rest of my life because it is a very powerful image and for me. This is the person that cleanses the space and keeps it clear. It's someone who knows that we're not here for arguing, so they are there to maintain an argument-free environment. There can be debate, The big difference between debate and arguing. This is also not a space for strife. So they're there to be a peacemaker, which peacemaking, I would argue, is kind of part path four and part path two, and a lot more path two than path four, because it's about learning to let go and to open up. Finally, the main work that we are here to do in opening space is literally opening, making a space for people to feel that they can contribute. Because unlike the Imperial Church, where you are there to listen to the edicts that are being brought down from on high, we gather together to share our experiences. We gather together to speak what we feel the Awen is calling us to bring into life. We're here to share our experiences in the one life and the wisdom that we've learned along the way. We're here to listen to one another, which is admittedly hard to do on a podcast. I wish that we could have more of your voices in on the podcast, and there are ways that we can look at for possibly doing that. Some of that will be doing calls for submissions maybe in future.
Yeah. Or live streams.
But we're here to bring together and to open everything up so that we can share this amazing experience together.
One of the things I find fascinating about holding space and why I lump it under just one of those facts of life, because it is something that can be found in all aspects of life. It's easy and more obvious to see it in the more formalized, ritualized process of the various organized religions and in a religious context. But even if you look into we guess you call the mundane world or the regular secular world, there we go, the secular world. But in that regular space, for instance, every restaurant goes through this process of holding space before every service. There is the prep work, all of the decorum, the culture that sets up the rules of engagement for that service is all prearranged, all set up. And in a good environment, the entire team helps to hold that space for the guests, making sure that the guests are behaving in the manner set up for that space and going through the process and the steps and just intuitively knowing, because it's more of a culture, because a lot of times culture will help to do that. A well-run office, the manager, the office manager, the person in charge of holding the space would actually every day as part of their morning, what they would call morning routine, because they might do it without cognition, but they still will go through steps, a ritual process to hold that space for the office for the day. And then those are those offices you walk into and they just feel right because the environment is set. It's not all chaotic because somebody is there holding that space. And oftentimes individuals in a group will naturally resonate and fall into that role. And a lot of times it just happens naturally without even need for thought. And it just really fascinates me because it's just one of those, like I said, it's a fact of life. It's a thing that just you see in everything.
So we talked about some elements here for holding space. And the first one I said was cleansing, clearing, and holding that clear space. For example, in the Catholic Church, traditionally, priests will come in and be blessing with holy water and with incense the space that you're in to clear it. This is something that we see in other groups that do this with various incenses. Many times, the purpose of ritual is to teach us how to do things in our regular life. It's a more heightened emotional place where we are rehearsing and practicing the skills that we will need in real life. And that doesn't mean that anytime we need to open space, we need to light some incense and walk around the room. We may need to do that. There may be energetic reasons or spiritual reasons that we want to do that. It may be because the sense memory of the incense or the scented oil that we're using for those blessings gets us into the right mindset. I know for a very long time, I had this wonderful citrus spice candle, and I can't find them anymore. But when I would go to write, there was something about it that just fueled my creativity. And as we know, there's actually been studies that show that citrus spice really does help with creativity. And so part of my opening for going to write would be to light that candle and kind of waft the aroma of it around the room. That would help me to get into that space. So, yeah, sometimes even in your regular day to day life, there will be a more ritualized aspect to this. It could be as simple as sweeping the floor or,
For instance, in an office, it could be simply turning on the lights, powering up the equipment, and setting up whatever the snacks slash beverage is as everybody arrives. It's just done instinctively.
it's one of the really interesting ideas of why you should make your bed, because you're making it welcoming and inviting for you when you go in there at night as a open space for sleep, because you're not getting in there going, oh, I need to put all the pillows back into place and make sure the blanket is centered and everything. But no, you've already gone in and you've made the bed, you've prepared it for yourself, so that space has been made open for you when you're going in there. When you're making a meal, setting up a mise en place ahead
Yes.
of time, where you are preparing all of your materials so that you are making space so that you can just enter that flow state while you're cooking and not have to stop and go, oh, I need to cut an onion or whatever. It's a really powerful experience once you start seeing how you can do this, offer the spaciousness.
Even as simply as driving. You get into the vehicle, and the first thing you're supposed to do is adjust your mirrors, check things, make sure it's powered on correctly, all that pre-flight check basically is making space for operating the vehicle and driving, transporting from place to place.
I grew up in the Ozarks, and a certain sense of hospitality was ingrained in me. Even when I'm really not feeling well, it's hard for me not to at least try to greet someone with a smile. And that's the simplest way of opening space for someone and to begin to hold it. Because when you're actually listening to someone, you're not waiting for your turn to talk, but you're listening to them, what they're saying, how they're saying it. You are demonstrating to them that this is an open space, an open place where they can share and give and be part of whatever it is you're doing, whether it's a night out with friends or it's a more serious moment of your life, whatever it is. That attentiveness, which is something that we learn in the Via Negativa, it's letting go of those stray thoughts and learning to build that mindfulness that is the spacious experience within us. The more we learn to develop that through our ritual life, through our prayer life, through our meditation, and through our practice, the easier it becomes for us to do this in regular day to day life. And recognizing moments when someone is either supposed to be holding space for everyone and isn't, or no one knows that they're supposed to be holding space. And then asking yourself, is this where you intervene and take on that role for yourself? In certain business contexts and in certain social contexts, you got to be careful with this, because this is how you start being seen as a leader. Because we have a very flawed understanding of how things work in our society that has been brought to us through this continuance of feudalism that we have in modern capitalism, where we have leaders who are there to guide and direct us and to be obeyed, which is the most ridiculous thought in the world. And if you're not careful, people will try to put those labels on you. And that can be uncomfortable for some people, that that's not what they want. Some people, like myself, I am not a leader. That is not what I do. That is not who I am. If I have to lead a group, I can lead a group, but it does not come natural to me. I am a space holder. I'm a vision keeper. It's what I do best, is hold open the space for people so that they can find and participate and be in what they are there to be participating in. Be mindful. This can be very helpful if you're in a meditation circle that's just not quite clicking. If you're having a coffee with some friends, like you've decided we're going to get together for brunch and everybody's talking over each other and nobody's listening to each other, demonstrating and making that space for you and those close to you, you'll notice this ripple effect that starts going out as you have started opening the space and more people are entering into it. Just be mindful. People can mistake this for leadership because we have a very flawed understanding of leadership in our society.
That, and also when you only have a small group of people, the roles get conflated. It's important to understand that the leader is one role, like a secretary, a note taker is one role. A vision coordinator, the person that holds the space, is another role. One person could end up wearing all three hats, but it's also important to be mindful and recognize you're wearing all three hats. So if they start to show signs of stress or whatever, maybe one of those hats shouldn't be. Or if they're having trouble being effective in all three roles, maybe they should hand off. Especially like in an office environment, it's easy to try to minimize and maximize, and that min maxing again, and so a person ends up having to burden too many roles, or they or that or the leader doesn't understand like these are multiple roles, and should they not be delegated out to multiple individuals?
I just want to stress, like, this is not a leadership position. And I
No.
keep saying that because in most instances in our lives, we do not need a leader.
Looking at a structured environment that people are more familiar with, you have, for instance, rules of conduct for like Senate and Congress, stuff like that. You have the person leading that moment, but then you have the space keepers are go for it.
Technically, that's the role of the parliamentarian.
Yeah, they're the space keepers.
Yes.
Yeah, because the space keeper is in the way maintaining the rules. Usually that's done through subtle cultural, subtle psychological interactions, all done on a subtle level, but they are the rule keeper because they're helping to keep the decorum, the cultural rules for that space, for what's appropriate for that space.
And appropriate is a wide gamut
Oh,
of
yeah.
things. What is appropriate to do when it's a night out with your friends? This may not be the same thing that's appropriate to do at your grandmother's 85th birthday party.
Yeah.
It might be. Who knows? I had a grandmother where it would have been. But I also had a grandmother that it really would not have been.
Yeah. I found, yeah, because I was just thinking, helping a friend counsel them on a conversation they were worried about being a jerk over when they had asked a question because the person in on a thread on threads openly made a comment that should have been a private comment. I was trying to clarify for them to let them know, like, yeah, this person got all indignant because they made a private comment that requires context. It requires a relationship so that it doesn't seem like a racist comment because it's an edgy thing to say that amongst friends is appropriate in a private context. And
Or
they
could
weren't,
be.
or could be, yeah, could be. It also depends on the relationship between those two friends. And all there's a lot of context needed for that to be appropriate. And it's like, so many people forget like threads is like standing up at a public forum and saying out loud whatever you're saying. It's not like a conversation at a dinner table in a restaurant. That's more private. There is an expectation of more privacy. That's more like a DM or a private channel that you're conversating in is more like that, where multiple people can be in that private channel, but that's a private channel. There's so that context can be expected amongst the members as long as those members have that. I was like, yeah, this person wouldn't have stood up on a bench in a park and said that out loud to a random crowd of people because they would have been called out for being inappropriate and they would have recognized that as being such. They even said it required context and understanding that was built up through this relationship.
This is where one of our
Appropriateness.
favorite, yeah, this is where one of our favorite virtues comes in. You'll notice if you haven't already that we talk about humility a lot because one, it's very radically misunderstood. This is one of those places where humility really does matter. When you're holding space, remember humility is.
Oh, yes. Occupying the space that you're supposed to occupy at the time you're supposed to occupy it.
So the person who is holding space is there to help define the limits and show where we are, what we are doing. What is this space that we are in? Is this a place where blue language is appropriate or not? Is this a place where we could be a little irreverent or are we being extremely solemn here? That is the art of holding space, is without having to stand up at the beginning and be your own Moses and declare your 10 commandments of, while we are here, these are the things that we shall and shall not do. Because nobody likes that. Nobody wants that. And it's not the best way to do this. The proper role of whoever is holding space for others is to do this through example and to be, and this is where that leadership confusion comes in, to be the one that when somebody is in doubt and they start saying something, they should be looking at the space holder to get cues as to maybe not for here, maybe that's not for here. And when you are in rhythm, when you are in flow, The vision keeper, the space holder, shouldn't have to say anything. Now, that's an art and a science that we don't have time to get into here because it is, in a lot of ways, more art than science because it's about having a rapport and having people understand your signals and your body language and whatnot. But it is something that can and does happen over time. It really does help to maintain that space. But once you have established that space, this is the space in which we're occupying, then each individual can actually come into their own better. Because if you're in a circle where everyone has a moment to share, well, the space is open and it's time for each person when they step into the center of that circle to share. They can now fill that space. And that is what is appropriate at that moment. And then they shrink back down and let somebody else come in and fill that space. And the cycle continues. And that breeds for a healthy community and a healthy way of sharing. A lot of this is very subtle work. A lot of this, honestly, starts with a smile, a kind word, a greeting, and in so doing, establishing the setting that you're in. When we greet you into this space, as we're opening this space, we try to get you into that mindset, into that place that we're making here. So I will say something on topic, but trying to help you move from whatever you were doing before you started listening into the space that we're going to be having for conversation. We play a little bit of my song Have Mercy, which I feel for these kinds of topics is a great way to open this space up because we're all here seeking grace and trying to share a little grace with one another. Then we introduce ourselves. Then we get into what we're doing. This is modeling that kind of holding space, which is what we do in every episode of this podcast. And hopefully we are holding a space that you feel comfortable participating in.
And even holding space in the comments, we always encourage comments to happen, but we also let people know it's okay if you don't want to make that comment publicly in the comments section. It's okay to send a message. We check them out. We will read them. We hold that space and let you know that yes.
And we're very clear because as a nice transition as we're approaching the end, on Spotify and on YouTube, we get to see those messages. So it's very easy for us to see those. Anywhere else that may give you the option to share messages, they may or may not be notifying us that they have offered that feature, which is why we're clear about you can talk to us on Spotify, you can talk to us on YouTube, or you can go to creationspaths.com and into the chat there and talk with us there.
Yeah.
Because these are spaces that we have set up that we know we're going to get notifications from, and we will be able to see your comments and be able to engage with you in a fairly reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
It's also why we talk about our social media sites, where we're Creations Paths on Threads, and we're creationspaths.com on Blue Sky, where you can go and connect with us there and have a conversation with us in those spaces. We're also Creations Paths on Instagram. And no, we do not have a Twitter account. Actually, I think we technically do. I think I reserved the name, but I don't use it.
Yeah.
Do believe we reserved the name so nobody else could have it, but...
Well, once again, that goes back to holding spaces. Yeah. Those running it failed to hold the space and encouraged a lot of, let's say, chaos.
Yes.
And in more of the negative context in that spot. So that now, if you're wanting to engage in battle and in either fighting or being a troll, that's a wonderful spot to go into, but that is not really for conversation.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you haven't checked them out already, check out our 2 new podcasts, The Church of the Oak and The Hollowstead, which should be available wherever fine podcasts are served. And if where you're listening to us does not have either of those podcasts, please let us know, and we'll make sure to fix that, because I spent a lot of time over the weekend making sure that we had submitted to all the podcast directories. There may be some podcast apps that we don't know about, so do let us know if you can't find them. That's a great help to us as well. If you can help us out, the easiest way to do it is to share what we're doing with other people so that more people can find out about the messages that we're putting out and the work that we're doing. You can share the podcast, the channels, what have you. Or if you have a few dollars that you could spare, either heading over to creationspath.com and becoming a member. As we keep saying, there are classes coming, and those who are paid members will get access to those classes before they go out to the general audience. That way we can make sure that we're giving them the best reaction time that we can. You can also support us on Ko-fi or Patreon. I am CE Dorset on both, and that helps with everything that we do, from my music to my writing and everything else. And remember, when you're giving to us, at least right now, you are not giving a gift to God. You are helping us to keep the lights on, to keep food on our table and a roof over our head. So please do not think of this as a solemn duty or anything like that. And do not give if you do not have money to give. All right. Thank you so much for being here. And until next time, may the one life well up in you and open space for you to find all of the joy, wisdom, creativity, and blessing that you seek in your life. Amen.
Amen.